What's good, y'all? It's your boy Sean P, the Blunt guy. Hey! And we're back again. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. And also follow me on Twitch, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And join the Discord if you are looking for a anime community that talks about a variety of things, right? But yeah, today we are here to read Berserk chapter 7. And if you're reading this through the book, this would be the Guardians of Desire chapter 5. We see this town that they were fighting in. Like the town that they were fighting in that's ruled by the Count, or that was ruled by the Count before he got killed. And they're all watching on towards the castle. And then we see a shot of the castle, and it's like this big cyclone above the castle. That's like that effect that Bahila happened when they opened that portal. All right, so we're back in this labyrinth. We see all the God's Hand characters all looking down, Guts next to his sword, and the beheaded head of the Count Teresia, and Puck in front of her. Oh man, things about to get juicy. Things are about to get juicy. So we get this page where we see God's Hand looking on, the Medusa looking demon. We got the Predator. We got little fat, little chubby, little chubs. And then below him we got the smaller chubs. So we got big chubs and little chubs. That's what I'm gonna call them. And then we got Falcon Man. Until I find this guy's name, I'm calling him Falcon Man because he reminds me of some type of a falcon or some type of bird or something. Man, I like his armor though. I like his armor. Puck says, that's the Godhand. Guts is gritting his teeth, looking up. Griffith. Oh. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Okay, so before going into reading this series, I only know two characters. I only knew Guts and I only knew Griffith, and I kind of know the dynamics of Griffith and Guts, that I guess they were cool at one point and then Griffith betrayed Guts or some sort. I'm not sure. And the Falcon guy, like Guts is looking at the Falcon guy. He says Griffith. So I'm assuming that's Griffith. Griffith is part of God's Hand. So from what I also know of Griffith, he was a human at one point. Or he is a human. I don't really know the aspects of what God Hand are. But he was a human at one point. So at some point, Griffith became part of God's Hand. So humans can become part of God's Hand. We see Griffith, right? And we get a better shot of him. And kind of looking at the lips, because one thing I seen about Griffith is he had very feminine characteristics, and just seeing his lips, they are very feminine. Right, they are very feminine, and you could kind of see his eye. It kind of look like it might be blocked by some hair, but yeah, that's Griffith, part of God's Hand. We get an even closer look of Griffith with the feminine looking lips and even the eyes, feminine eyes. And Guts is screaming Griffith. So Puck says, Griffith? Who's Griffith? Griffith just stands there. Guts is looking just in anger. And then Griffith says, still squirming around in your pitiful existence, I see. Oh, I'm just being thrown so much stuff, man. I'm being thrown. Like, how does Guts survive this? Like, I guess Griffith isn't going to decide to kill him, possibly. Oh, this is wild. This is wild. This is wild. Guts says, what did you say? Griffith is starting to, like, kind of looking over. Gus says, wait. Griffith looks at the dead Count's head, and we see all of God's Hand looking on towards the dead, decapitated head of the Count. Even Guts looks over, and one of God's hands says, "You, who have been ordained by the laws of fate." We see the predator looking God's hand. He says, "Your desperate desire for life has cleaved open space and brought us here." He says, "Archangel Void, please grant me my wish. Take that man's life. Avenge me upon him, please." The predator looks on towards him, and he says, "We can't do that." The count says, "Why?" And then the Medusa looking God's hand says, "Your desire, which has cleaved open space, is nothing more than an over attachment to life and a fear of death. It's not based on any personal hatred for that man." Lil Chubb says, "We have come hither to grant you your deepest desire, you who have been ordained by the laws of fate." And the count says, "But that man, he's the one they call the Black Swordsman, the one who's destroyed so many apostles of the Godhand. You should consider him a hated enemy." Lil Chubb says, "Enemy?" Griffith says, "A few worthless servants, killed as inconsequential to us." Black Swordsman, you say? His petty existence is beneath our notice. Damn. Damn. Guts just looks in like shame. And I guess Guts is trying to stand up and grab his sword, and he's coughing up blood. Guts is back up on his feet with his sword in his hand. Well, that man is still hurt, bro. You still hurt. Griffiths noticed, and he's not even amused, really. Puck says, "Guts." Big Chubb says, Little Chubb says, "Magnificent. He can stand up with all those injuries. Fascinating." Medusa one says, "Such impressive willpower and fighting spirit." Little Chubb says, "Extreme hatred towards the Godhand propping him up, towards Femto in particular. Who, after all, is responsible for marking him with the brand?" Big Chubbs, he says, "And yet how long will he last?" So I'm assuming Griffith's God's hand name is Femto. Just an assumption. I could be wrong. Guts is walking up the stairs towards Griffith, and Griffith just stands there. Guts says, "My petty existence. Don't make me laugh. You're where you are now thanks to this petty existence. Thanks to me, who's fighting an army of the dead because of you. Thanks to me, who's writhing around in my own blood. You stand there putting on airs like you're some kind of godly being. Griffith." Griffith stands there and says, "Yes, you're nothing but a squirming, sacrificial offering." Puck looks on and says, "What happened between those two?" And Guts is already like 3/3 of the way up them steps. So as he's walking up the steps, all of a sudden he gets like a slice on his neck that, we don't even really see what sliced him, but like all this blood is squirting out. Unless that's like, oh, okay, never mind. It wasn't a slice. It's his branding. Like he's getting closer to Griffith, and now his branding is bleeding even more, and pretty much, it's like an injury. It's like an injury. The closer he gets to God's hand, the more his injury reopens. And Griffith says, "Fool, don't you know that your brand responds to demon kind and cause you pain? For lesser demons, you might feel little more than a needle prick. But the greater the demon, the greater the response, increasing your pain without end. And if that demon is too great, that pain might even kill you. That's as far as you go." And Guts falls back down the steps in pain. Wow, that's like that's pretty harsh right there, right? Like, it's like, how do you, like, I'm assuming Guts' goal is to kill Griffith and possibly other God's Hand. I don't know if he wants to kill all of the God Hand or if he wants to kill Griffith specifically. But if you can't even get close to the man without almost dying just from an injury, or the scar pretty much acting as an aggravated injury, how do you ever get your revenge back? Like, how do you ever get your revenge back? That's tough right there. That's a tough dilemma to have to be in, because it's like getting your revenge might cost you your life even before you get your revenge, or just not get your revenge. But you know, and if he gets his revenge and he is successful at killing Griffith and possibly the other Godhand, does the curse he's living in, does it go away? Does it still stay? You know, is it worth getting revenge? You know, other than making yourself feel better for avenging a betrayal. You know, is it worth it if, you know, you still have to go through all this stuff? Man, Guts is that's a tough situation to be in. That's a tough situation to be in. But the God Hand says he's finished. And we see all the God Hand looking on at Guts. And he braces his foot on the step so he doesn't fall completely. And you see Griffith's eyes just get wide, like, what? So Guts swings his sword at Griffith and says, ah! Both of the Chubs says, oh. And Griffith is standing there, still unamused, but, you know, impressed, I guess. And next we see Guts flying back off the staircase. I'm assuming Griffith hit Guts with something that we might have not have seen. I'm just not sure what it was. Guts hit a wall hard, and then he falls face forward into the ground. Medusa says, what tremendous fighting spirit. The fact that he could even swing his sword amidst all that pain. I'm sure he's hardly even aware. Incredible. And then Puck flies towards Guts, says, Guts! Little Chub says, and don't forget his body is covered in wounds after his fight with the Count. If that boy becomes one of ours, I'd love it, says Medusa. And then Big Chub says, but he hasn't been ordained by the laws of fate, so he can't be among us. Besides, he's finished. And Guts is just laying on the ground, probably on death's door. But we know Guts. Guts could be at death's door all he wants. He ain't never going through it. He ain't never going through that door. So we got Griffith looking on at Guts as Puck calls out to Guts. He says, it seems I have unintentionally granted your wish, Count. And you see the Count's face like smiling. He says, I'm so grateful. All of God's hands are just standing there. We get a nice little shot. And he said, and the Predator says, should I call him Predator or should I call him the Martian? Because he looked kind of like a Martian instead of the Predator. Now that I got a closer look at him, he looked like one of the Martians from that old Martian invasion movie back in the days, where we see all these Martians. They have you can see their brains. I'm gonna call him Martian. Martian says, enough of the sideshow. It is time to perform the invocation of doom. Puck and Teresia looks on. Martian says, Count, a sacrifice. For that you can use the Black Swordsman. Medusa says, not good enough, Count. Oh, hold on. Okay. Let me go back to the last page when he says, it was the Count who says, for that you can use the Black Swordsman. Like the Count was saying the sacrifice he could use is a Black Swordsman. Medusa says, not good enough, Count. And the Count says, but why? Big Chub says, that man has already been marked for sacrifice. And Medusa says, what's more, the boy is merely your enemy. As a sacrificial offering for the invocation of doom, not just any lump of flesh and blood will do. It must be important, or it must be someone important to you. Part of your soul, someone so close to you that it's almost like giving up a part of you. Lil Chubb says, by making such a sacrifice to demonkind, you'll be able to sever any last remnant of your own humanity. I already know where this is going. I know where this is going. It's going to be Teresia. She's right there. I know it's not going to be Puck. It's going to be Teresia. She's important to the Count. The question is the Count actually going to sacrifice his daughter that he still does love? And if he does it, does he become part of Godhand? That's the question. So now I'm starting to get a little more understanding of how one can become part of Godhand. You must sacrifice somebody close to you, which also tells me that is also most likely how Griffith became part of Godhand. He had to sacrifice Guts, potentially. And so, meaning that's how Guts must have gotten the brand, because they say they say Guts is already a sacrifice. He's already fated to be a sacrifice. Meaning, like, they can't use him because that's Griffith's sacrifice, potentially. What I'm assuming. So I guess Teresia will end up getting the branding. And she'll be marked as a sacrifice. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, so Big Chubb says a fissure in your heart will open up into which evil will surge. And Puck is thinking to himself, giving up part of yourself. Oh no. The Count says, then who? Griffith points, and he points right at Teresia. I knew it. And then Teresia is looking on in shock. The Count and Puck both look, as well as Big Chubbs and Medusa. Griffith says, cut your love asunder, Count. So is that the Count's real name, Asunder? Or is that going to be like his name, his Godhand name? But I wonder why Griffith calls him Asunder. I'm assuming that's his real name. Either that or that's going to be his Godhand name. Because I think one of the Godhands said something about Fatima or something when, I guess, referencing Griffith. So I think Griffith has a new name for being a Godhand member. So maybe Asunder is the Godhand name of the Count. Teresia says, no. The Count says, wait, please. If it were anyone else, any other person but my daughter, Teresia. Medusa says, that's right. Any other person would be meaningless, Count. Lil Chubb says, don't be so upset. Just do what you did last time. Oh, what he did last time. His wife. Wow. So that whole story of when Teresia was telling Puck, like, the cult, there was a cult that kidnapped Teresia's mother and the Count's wife and pretty much tortured her and killed her and made her a sacrifice. That wasn't fully true. Yes, she was a sacrifice, but the Count gave her up in order to become an apostle. Oh, the plot thickens. The plot thickens. Teresia says, last time. And Little Chubb says, my goodness, the little lady doesn't know what her father has done. The Count says, stop, please. Not to my daughter. Not that. Little Chubb says, here's what happened. And so we see Little Chubb summoning like this little light thing. I'm assuming it's going to be like a flashback. So we see a young human version of the Count in this little flashback bubble. Puck and Teresia looks. Teresia says, what? Little Chubb says, just open time and space for a little look-see. So he could pretty much open up like a little space that goes back in time and, show what happened in the past. And he says, this was the Count 7 years ago. A bit more trim, I might add. And behold, it's you and your mother. Teresia looks on and cries, Mother. Lil Chubb says, a noble man and his beautiful, virtuous wife. A family, the very picture of happiness. As it would seem. The Count says, stop. Guts look like one of his eyes is open, but I can't really tell. But we see blood kind of splatting out of his head. Okay, yeah, one of his eyes is open when I scroll down even further. Lil Chubbs continues his story. At the time, the land was overrun by pagans in an attempt to destroy the heretics. The Count hunted them down throughout his kingdom. Hence, he was often away from the castle. We see horses coming out of this castle, and he says, exhausted from a long, harsh heretic hunting campaign, the Count rushed back to the arms of his beloved wife and daughter in order to soothe his soul. The Count says, stop! The story continues, and that's when it happened. We see like this, all these people having this orgy, and we see that statue, right, of I forget what it's called. It's like the demon goat head statue, where he's kind of like standing like this, right, with his hand up or whatever. Is it like I think his name is Bahilit, right? Or it's like Bahamut. I can't remember what that symbol is called. That demon symbol is called. Somebody let me know in the comments. So we get kind of a closer view of that demon statue with the goat head. He says it was an uncanny sight. In the midst of a strange stench and a wave of heat, a sea of flesh squirmed in a tangled mass. Towering above it all was the statue of a grotesque god with the head of a goat. And we see like all these, naked people just climbing on it in the middle of this orgy. And entwined around that god, as if clinging to it, was the figure of a woman writhing in ecstasy. Is that I think that's the Count's wife and Teresia's mother. Wow. Contorting her face in pleasure, it was the figure of the woman he loved above all else. Oh, he done married a freak joint. He done married a really twisted, demented freak joint. Like, oh my goodness. Teresia says, that's not true. It can't be true. The Count says, Teresia. And in this flashback bubble, we see a very angry Count. Yeah, I'd be angry too, man. I'd be angry as hell too. His eyes is just bloodlusted right now. And Lil Chubb says the Count went into a blind rage. When he came out of it, not a single person was moving. Only heaps of flesh and blood lay scattered about. And we see all these dead bodies laying around. So he didn't kill Teresia's mom just yet. And we see him like towering above Teresia's mom. Like she knows the deal. She knows what's about to happen. Teresia is looking. She says, no. And then we see the Count. He's lifting up his sword. The Count has these tears in his eyes. Like it's painful for him to do this. So Teresia's mom is just kind of accepting of it. Like she's not even afraid of it. Like maybe this was like a setup. Maybe she wanted this to happen. Maybe she wanted this to happen. Cause she's like reaching out for it. She's like reaching out both hands for it. It looks like, I don't know if he did it, right? Like we see the sword hit the ground, like the tip of the sword hit the ground, and the Count is like disappointed and he's crying. Like I feel as though he couldn't do it. Lil Chubb says, that's right. You couldn't do it. You couldn't cut away half of yourself. And seeing the triumphant, knowing smile of your betrayer drove you to the depths of despair. You decided to end your own life to escape that despair. However, your despair itself was part of the will of fate. And then we see the Bahilit on like the table, and it like reforms its face just perfectly. So I'm assuming maybe it's not just blood. It's despair that activates it's the despair that activates the Bahilit. And when he didn't want to die, right? When he was in despair, and his blood ran down and hit that Bahilit, it wasn't the blood that activated. It might have been the despair, what I'm assuming. All right, so the portal opened. We see 4 members of the God's Hand. So I think this might even be before. This might be before Griffith join God's hand, because we see the silhouettes of Godhand, but we only see 4 of them, and Griffith's isn't there. It says the welling of your soul, which could never be eased by the gods of the world, opened up a portal to another dimension. And yeah, so we see the Martian, Big Chubs, Medusa, and Lil Chubs, and we don't see Griffith. So yeah, I don't think Griffith was a part of God's hand at this moment. This was before that. So this was before Griffith betrayed Guts. And you said, the Count says, are you gods or messengers from hell? It makes no difference. Whatever you are, save me from my suffering. If you do, I'll give you anything. And Lil Chubb says, and we promised you that we would make you into a supernatural being who would never know sorrow or despair. For a single phrase, in exchange for just one phrase, we see what looks to be Teresia, I think. I think this is Teresia's mother. The Martian has like this flamed branding, the same branding that Guts has on his neck. The Martian is like holding in his hands. I'm assuming he's gonna put it on Teresia's mother. So we see like the demonic form of what we learned to be the Count, pretty much devouring Teresia's mother, because we see like the branding on her chest, and it's like his body is made up of other little demons. So it's like one demon body with a culmination of other little demon bodies. And this is all like happening right in front of Teresia. She's just watching on. And Lil Chubb says, yes, indeed, you said it. I offer this woman for sacrifice. The life you couldn't take by your own hand, the life of the person you loved the most and hated the most, you gave it to us so that you could bury your fragile human heart, so that you could transcend your very humanity. And the Martian is like pretty much throwing like a branding towards Teresia. And we got Godhand all looking on as this young girl gets branded. And they say, we shall grant your burning desire. And it's like right about to hit Teresia. And she says, ah. The Count looks in disapproval. Puck says, Teresia. He flies off and Gut says, hey Bug, all I need is my right arm. Make it so that I can use it. Gut says, hurry up. Do it. Now. And then that is the end of the chapter. The Guardians of Desire, chapter 5, end. Bruh, that chapter, man. That was a wild freaking chapter. That was a wild chapter. Bro, oh, I like that. That was, so far, that's probably been one of the best chapters. Like, it kind of answered so many questions, right? It answered so many questions. First one it answered was the Falcon guy, right? The guy who I was saying I like the armor, all that stuff. Like, who is it? You know what I mean? Like, Like, he might be the strongest. I don't know if he's the strongest, but we discover who it is, and it is indeed Griffith. It is Griffith. So I didn't think we would be learning who Griffith is so soon. But that is Griffith. That is Griffith. And to me, it answers the question, because the few things that I knew about Berserk before going into it, right? Based on a lot of posts I've seen on like in anime groups, was about Guts and Griffith. Those were the only 2 characters that I knew of. And I knew that they were close at one time. They were comrades. I don't know how close their bond was, but they were comrades. And I also know that Griffith betrayed Guts. Griffith betrayed Guts. But seeing how all this works, seeing how, Godhand pretty much gives these brandings out, they'll grant you great power. In return, you have to sacrifice someone you care about, right? Like the closest person you care about. In order to do that, they give that person a brand, and that person is pretty much marked for death. They gave it to the Count's wife, and then the Count's wife got devoured by the Count's demon. They're about to give it to Teresia, and then she's going to be marked for death. And I also assume that's going to grant the Count great power, possibly making him a God Hand member, possibly. But we also know beforehand that Guts has that branding. He had that mark of fate, right? And learning that Griffith, the guy who betrayed Guts at one point, is part of God Hand now, I can only assume that Griffith became God Hand by sacrificing Guts and giving him that branding. That brand of death, right? So now I'm starting to understand more about that branding. I'm starting to understand more about Guts and Griffith's relationship, at least how it came to an end. I don't know how close they were. I know we're going to learn that more as we go along. Hey, like maybe they had like a squad, right? Maybe they was part of like a platoon or something. And maybe Griffith sacrificed his whole platoon, Guts being one of them. And Guts is just the only one to survive. I don't know. Maybe that's why Griffith was able to become God Hand. Because now that I think about it, it's like the Count sacrificed his wife, and he didn't automatically become God Hand. He just kind of became like an apostle or something. He didn't become a God Hand though. So maybe sacrificing one person isn't really enough to become God Hand. Maybe you have to sacrifice more than one, like two or something. Maybe you have to sacrifice everybody that you care about. Maybe the reason why the Count couldn't become God Hand because even though he sacrificed his wife, he still had a daughter that he cared about. So in order to become God Hand, you got to sacrifice everybody you care about. Like that's what I'm kind of thinking. Maybe in order to become God Hand, you got to sacrifice everybody you care about. So in the case of Griffith and Guts, maybe Guts was the only person that Griffith cared about, and he sacrificed Guts, and now he has nobody, right? Maybe now he has nobody, so that gave him enough to become God Hand. Or maybe Griffith had more people he cared about, and he ended up sacrificing all of them. Like maybe they had a platoon of men, and he gave everybody the mark, and all of them except Guts happened to die. And that was enough for Griffith to ascend to a God Hand instead of just an apostle. But I don't know. That's just kind of my assumption. I don't know how it worked. I guess I'll learn more as we go along. It could also be a strength thing. Like maybe Griffith was just super strong and had a super strong will, and that was enough to qualify him to be God Hand as well as sacrificing Guts. I don't know. But we also learned the true story of the Count and what happened to his wife. This whole time we thought that she was sacrificed by a group of cult members, a group of heretics, right? Like they had her hostage. They demanded that the Count allows them to worship however they want to worship freely, but the Count ain't allow it to happen, so they killed his wife. That's not what happened. She was a heretic herself, having like these big orgies with this big statue of, I forget what you call that statue, right? There's a name for that statue, that figure. It's like a goat-headed figure that, does this and, has his hand out or whatever. There's a name for that. I forget what it's called. I'm not a cultist or anything, so I wouldn't know what it's called. But they was having orgies around this thing, just all like on it, like sexually and all that stuff. And the Count just went savage and killed everybody there, but he couldn't kill his wife. So the Bahilit, the Bahilit, which is another thing we learn, is how you actually activate the Bahilit. It activates through despair. When someone's in despair, at least what I think. at least what I'm getting from this. It activates off of despair, and then it activated, and they granted him the power to be able to kill his wife, pretty much, and they made him a demon as well, and he pretty much devoured his wife himself. So yeah, but yeah, that's all I pretty much got for this chapter. It's a great chapter. I can see when people say this is when things start getting good. Hey, I get it now, because that was a flame chapter. Because, like, you know, up to this point I've had so many questions, and this chapter answered so many of them. Oh man, I didn't think we would be getting the stuff that we got as quick as we did, which is still dope, right? Which is still dope. But yeah, anyway, y'all, it's your boy Sean P. the Bluff Guy. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Follow me on Twitch. Also, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, leave a comment of what you thought about this video in the comment section below. You know, let me know what you think of Berserk. You know, if there's some things that I got wrong, you know, let me know. Except try not to spoil things. Just maybe give me some corrections or something. Don't give me no spoilers in the comments. That's all I ask. Also, join the Discord. Join the Discord. But yeah, it's your boy Sean P. the Bluff God. Y'all have a good day, and I am out of here. Peace.